Folks, California has finally gotten the memo. COVID is over. The memo was apparently sent via Pony Express and has been en route for literal years now, but better late than never, I guess. The state has, alas, rolled back its mask mandate for what libs deem high-risk indoor settings, such as hospitals, medical care offices, long-term care, correctional facilities, homeless shelters, emergency evacuation centers, and places designated for cooling and warming stations, whatever the hell that is. They will all be face diaper optional. So we know what that means. Most liberals are still going to wear their precious face masks alone in their cars, but whatever, to each their own. In addition to the great unmasking, starting April 3rd, healthcare workers will no longer be forced to get the worthless and ineffective COVID jab. Again, glad the most progressive state in the nation is still living like it's 2020. But Californians aren't alone in their backwardness. The ladies of The View are finally allowing their audience members to breathe and show their faces. And I guess for them, this is a whole new world.
Look at y'all sit up here with no masks on.
I know. Yeah.
It's a birthday. Wait a minute now.
Yeah, it's important to note the ladies of The View haven't worn masks during the show in years, but have forced their audience members to. And I would say I feel badly for those audience members, but they've already made the decision to go to a taping of The View, so chances are they didn't mind the mask or the shrill and brain-melting torture of listening to those hacks live and in person. But folks, you know it's bad when California and even the ladies of The View are more reasonable than the idiots that run DHS, as they still will not allow the #1 tennis player in the world, unvaccinated Novak Djokovic, to enter and play tennis in the USA. Yes, the supposedly freest nation on earth, the beacon of liberty that we used to be, the United States of America, still bans non-permanent residents if they haven't been vaccinated with the experimental #DiedSuddenly vaccine. What a Djokovic.
Nikki Haley, one of the Republican candidates, is calling for mental competency tests for those politicians over the age of 75. What do you think about that?
Ridiculous.
Would your husband ever take one of those?
I mean, we haven't even discussed, we would never even discuss something like that.
Well, of course, you would never want Joe taking a mental competency test. It would turn out very badly, and then power-hungry Jill would be at risk of the whole weekend at Bernie's charade falling apart, as obvious as it already is. But Joe isn't the only one that should be forced to take a competency test. Quite frankly, I find it completely inappropriate that not one but two Democrat senators are out of the office due to their own age and mental issues. If you cannot serve or be physically present in Congress, you should give up your seat. And that goes for politicians on both sides of the aisle. No more of this taking the seat to the grave, egotistical mumbo jumbo. But I digress, and I will defer to my next guest for comment on that and more. Joining me now is host of Newsmax's Spicer & Co. and author of The Parrots Go Bananas, Sean Spicer. Sean, it's great to have you.
Good to see you, Tommy.
So I want to start with that just real quickly, as we're already gearing up for 2024. It's basically on our doorstep at this point, thank God. But what do you think about this whole issue of Joe Biden running again in 24 and not going to take a mental competency test, and Jill just continuing to be his cheerleader because she just wants to be empowered that badly?
Well, look, I think that the American people, look, this is a guy who fell up the stairs multiple times last week. I don't need to see a competency test. I see it every day. He stumbles through sentences. He stumbles upstairs to Air Force One. I don't know that I need a test to tell me what I see with my own eyes every day. I don't think the American people need to see that as well. I think if you can't see with your own eyes what's going on in the economy, you can't see with your own eyes what's happening in terms of foreign policy, then you need to have the competency test taken. The American people are the ones who need to check their self when they're going to vote. If you think that this is what you want for America, then I think then you, the voter, have the bigger problem here, because Joe Biden has given you all the evidence that you need to show you that he is not capable of performing the duties of President of the United States.
Well, speaking of seeing it with our own eyes and the smoke and the mirrors, the liberal media parades in front of our very eyes, you know, we got a bombshell this week, the January 6th, the real tapes. All right, Tucker Carlson was kind enough to expose that for us. And although I've always said that was a horrible day, whether it was Trump supporters or antagonists, I don't know. We'll never probably know because that January 6th committee was a total farce. But what we saw, that footage of the officers essentially walking these people through. It seemed actually very calm in most situations from the footage that we were shown. Completely different animal than what the January 6th committee, Joe Biden, and the liberal media have been feeding us for years now. What did you think when you saw that footage?
I've seen a couple of clips online in the past, since last night when they came out, I guess. I think that what it shows is that there's a lot more to just one side of a story. As you said, I agree with the first part of what you said. Look, I think anytime that somebody breaks through the window of a federal building, you should know that that's wrong, right? There's no rhyme or reason that ever justifies saying, I thought I was supposed to go through the window of the U.S. Capitol. There is no, we are, as a conservative, as a Republican, as a law and order person, I've never justified violence of any sort, never mind against a law enforcement agent. There's video showing that. Now, does that mean that all of those people did that? Absolutely not. And what I think the tapes that we have seen that Tucker started to show last night is that there's just more to the story. And what I think the point that you are bringing up is that the January 6th Commission, and it's no surprise because of how it was constituted, was a very myopic view of what happened that day. And I think that what was sad about how it manifested itself is that the American people didn't not only get a full view of what happened, but that we really didn't do anything to prevent something like that from happening again, especially in terms of the security failures that occurred. And that's what I think the real failure was of that committee, is that it really just became an attempt to get Trump and to show everything in the most negative light, as opposed to what were the real failures that occurred? How do we present that again? How do we reinforce the security at the Capitol and make sure that law enforcement has the reinforcements and the resources that they need going forward?
Yeah, I certainly agree with you. And again, that day was disgusting. It does not represent Trump supporters. I don't believe it represents Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form. It was completely inappropriate and disgusting. However, this is an ongoing theme now of us feeling like we're being lied to. It's like that we're not getting the full truth on the January 6th committee, which we paid for. They're sitting in Congress. They're getting our tax dollars to be there. They're wasting our time and energy and resources. And then you see the problems with the FBI, the DOJ, the Hunter Biden laptop, the Twitter files, the COVID misinformation. I mean, it's just piling up. It's like we're being lied to and lied to and lied to. And a lot of Americans are really, really frustrated, as they should be. And I know that you were just at CPAC. So what was the overall tone of the folks at CPAC? Is it still a Trump crowd? Is it a shifting crowd? Is it half establishment? What did you see there?
So first of all, let me just, there's a poll out this morning, 74% of Americans don't have confidence in the CDC. That's sad. I mean, this goes to your previous point. The idea that we get medical information from our government and we have to question it. I've always thought that was the gold standard growing up. The CDC said, take 2 aspirin, you're good. Take a warm compress, put it on your head, whatever it was. You thought, okay, these are the smart people. These are the people who are going to keep me safe. And now you have to question it. And even more so after what happened with COVID, because we were told, all of these people who questioned, and it wasn't even that they knew better. It's just they said, hey, this doesn't make sense. Shouldn't I get a second opinion? Something that we were grown up taught that, hey, question this, get a second opinion, make sure. All of that went out the window. And this, I digress, but I will just say that you hit on something that's really important, because the loss of trust in these institutions is horrible for democracy. It's horrible for our country. I've been going to CPAC for over 25 years. I will say this, it has definitely become more Trump, but I don't know that that wasn't not to be expected, right? Trump was the sitting president, 2 years ago. Over the last 5-6 years, both in terms of his candidacy and then in terms of his presidency, that this is what people knew. Now, did Nikki Haley have an opportunity to come in and speak, and Mike Pompeo? And I was there last year too. They got warm welcomes. But again, I got to say, this is like any other deal in politics. If you really want to get your people there, then get them there. And I think that the Trump team did an amazing job getting their folks there. But there's a lot of folks that were in talk radio. CPAC has evolved over the last 10 years. The amount of media that is there dedicated to getting out conservative voices and conservative principles and ideas has just quadrupled exponentially over the last decade. And I'm just so proud to walk down and watch these people who whether it's just radio folks or podcasts or people who have set up a channel on YouTube or Rumble. It's amazing as a conservative. It warms my heart because when I first started going there, we were trying to convince the Washington Post or CBS or whomever to cover us. Now it's like, hey, get out of the way, guys. We've got people to talk to and you're getting in our way. Right. It was exciting to see that. But more than anything, to your point about the mood, people were excited. People wanted to talk about 2024. They wanted to talk about how we implement a lot of victories. A lot of the members of Congress were talking about some of the things that they were doing and the rest of the agenda. I was fired up. I moderated a panel on ESG and some of the things that are going on in both the private sector and in the state level to combat this woke agenda. So I thought the mood was great. Did Trump dominate it? Absolutely. But I just don't know that that's that's news to anybody.
Right. Well, it's not. I mean, CPAC, ever since Donald Trump announced his candidacy, even really before that, Trump has been a star at CPAC. We know this. And we know, they make a joke about it, but when you have really great merchandise, as he does, with the Make America Great Again, everybody's wearing those hats. It's very visible to see who is a Trump supporter. I was surprised somewhat that Ron DeSantis chose not to be there this year, but I think that was a very strategic move. I want to talk to you about that because this is something that I'm a little concerned about, Sean. I got to be honest with you, because over the weekend as well, you had some disgruntled Trump supporters, a very small group, protesting outside of Ron DeSantis book events, being very loud, very unwelcoming, chanting, heckling DeSantis supporters. I look back at that and I say, DeSantis supporters and Trump supporters are the same people. We're the same people. And so I already see this battle for the hardcore Trump supporters that they are going to go after their friends, their allies. And they're working really hard to make Ron DeSantis seem establishment, which we all know he is not. So I wonder what your prediction is for how this is going to go down. Should we get an announcement from Ron DeSantis?
So two things. One, look, Trump has run twice before. He has more political data on every voter in America than any candidate running, including Joe Biden. He is running for renomination for the third time. And politically speaking, this is and this is no slight against any candidate, but he has an advantage data-wise and infrastructure-wise that no candidate has ever had in history. So you can't underestimate what an advantage that is for him going into this primary season. Ron DeSantis, Mike Pompeo, Mike Pence, Joe Biden, nobody has this on either side. So he has this distinct advantage of understanding the playing field and having the data and the funding that nobody else possibly can compete with. So that's now it's his to lose, but he is, by all intents and purposes, the 800-pound gorilla. It is his nomination to lose. Here's the deal with DeSantis, and this goes back to your question about his CPAC deal. There's currently a resign to run law in Florida. Today, DeSantis gave the state of the state address in Florida. 60 days from now, the legislature will dissolve. My guess is that a day or two before that happens, you will see a bill introduced or moved quickly that will change that and allow him to seek the presidency. But prior to that, he's not going to make any moves that would take away from him being able to, quote, do his job and take away from the focus. He wants to put points on the board. He's got a lot of things that he wants to get done in the legislative session down in Tallahassee that are great for conservatives. And this speaks to your point. He's got a lot of great things that are pro-Second Amendment. He's got a lot of great things that are protecting life. He's got a lot of great things that are pro-parent, all part of that legislative agenda in Tallahassee that I think will help him should he choose to do this. I'm with you on this. Look, we're all on the same team. Primaries are good. They will make Donald Trump a stronger candidate. They will get him back in shape, if you will, politically speaking. And at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. It's Ron DeSantis is saying, I'm basically for all the Trump policies. I have a different personality. Mike Pompeo is saying, I support all these Trump policies. I have a little bit of a different personality. Nikki Haley saying, so we're all going to get the same thing, and that's a great thing. I'm a pro primary guy. Look, Donald Trump went through a very competitive primary. He was very successful. Joe Biden went through a competitive primary, and he was successful. Bill Clinton went through one. George W. Bush went through one. So primaries are good things. There's nothing to be worried about, folks. We're going to do great, and we'll win.
I agree with you. I would just hope that the Trump supporters out there remember that let the best man or woman win, and understand that it's also about electability, because you're right. Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump are going to have very similar policies, if not the same policies, if they were to be president. Now, we got to figure out who's going to be able to win, which is what I said the other night on Hannity. I said, listen, Donald Trump doesn't need to convince us he would be a great president with a lot of great ideas. He needs to convince us that he can win, because we cannot throw this election down the toilet. And a lot of us are very concerned with all the baggage that he has, that he's been accumulating, not through a fault of his own, for in large part, that he can win again. But I do want to talk about.
Look, I got to be honest.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I just got to say this. I say this like, look, choose who you want in the primary, vote whom you want. But I will tell you this: there is nobody seeking the Republican nomination, including Donald Trump, that cannot beat Joe Biden. So rest easy, my friends. I'm not kidding. And I just, there is nobody. Trump actually is the only one in current polls that actually does beat Biden. But I don't really care who it is. Should you choose to nominate me, and I'm not running, nor will I accept the nomination, but I could beat Joe Biden. Tommy, you could beat Joe Biden. This cup could beat Joe Biden. This is not going to be a tough thing. People in America are having buyer's remorse every day, more and more. So I feel very good about where we are.
I do too, but I will say this. When the Democrats have the voting machine that they have, and when I mean machine, I mean their operation, what they have been able to do with elections, they have outplayed us. So that is my concern. Yes. We could have a perfect candidate with no baggage, but if we don't learn how to do what the left does with the early voting and the ballot harvesting where it's legal, we are going to lose anyway. But I want to talk about your book, because we're trying to take this message to the young people. Parents go bananas. Tell my viewers what their children can expect from your book.
So I've written 3 serious books. This was one that I actually got to write with my 2 12-year-old kids. It's called The Parents Go Bananas, as you said. It's from Brave Books. Julie Banderas there at Fox, she just wrote one. Brave Books does a series of pro-Christian, pro-patriotic books. My book, The Parents Go Bananas, it's about the dangers of fake news. I don't say the word fake news. I talk about what it's like. I mean, think Nick Sandmann. Think of 2 characters in this book that get accused. They're playing. You can see the beautiful illustration that they're playing this game of the equivalent of baseball, and it's called Mushroom Village. They get accused of cheating. The kids pile on and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." They obviously, I'm not going to ruin anything here, but they do get vindicated. And we try to teach kids about what it's like to not jump on the bandwagon and presume somebody's guilty just because they were accused of it. And that's basically what happens with fake news. We saw this with Andrew Mitchell lying about Ron DeSantis' record the other day with that AP course. We've seen it with COVID. You and I just spoke about that over and over again. We saw it with Nick Sandmann. I've been a victim of this myself. You have, where people sort of impugn motives on something that you've said, and slowly the truth comes out and everyone goes, 2 months later, in the case of COVID, 2 years later, it's, oops, that's not true. And sorry that we called you a purveyor of misinformation, a conspiracy theorist. So the cool part about Brave Books is that we can teach kids, in this case, 4 to 12 years old, a great lesson. The best part is if you go to bravebooks.com, if you buy my book right now, it's $1, and you can sign up for the subscription to get all of these books once a month. So it's a fun book. There's lessons in the back for parents who want to do something and teach the kids a lesson. But again, I don't say the word fake news or talk about the media. I know it's for 4 to 12-year-olds. But if there's a reporter in your family that works for CNN or the Washington Post, you can buy it, and they could definitely still learn from it. Because I understand that you're never too old to understand the dangers of fake news.
And I'm guessing that drag queens will not be reading your book at story hours. Would I be correct to assume that, Sean?
100%.
All right. Well, hey, there we go. Congratulations on the new book and everything that you've done. And thank you for spending so much time with me today. And I hope everyone will check out Brave Books, because, we always say that we want to be on a level playing field with the left and their propaganda and their machine. Well, sometimes you just got to compete with them. So that's fantastic that you're doing that and setting a great example. Sean, I hope to see you very soon. And 2024 is right on our doorstep, so I hope to have you back.
That's
and
right.
We'll talk about it when we get a DeSantis announcement, because things are going to get very interesting.
That's right. By the way, second week of May, you can count on it. Always good to see you, Tommy. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean.